I am Carla Martin, and I am so excited to welcome you to the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. The Lyceum Committee presents Mr. Daniel Holum and Mr. Mark Henn today, April 25th, 2012, in the Hathaway Howard Fine Arts Complex. The 11 o'clock program will proceed as follows. A greeting and purpose by Mr. Kent Broughton, President of the Student Government Association. Introduction of presenters, Dr. Young Park, the Assistant Professor in the Department of Agriculture. We will then have our presentations by Mr. Mark Henn, an animator at Walt Disney Feature Animation Studios, and Mr. Daniel Holum, a financial advisor and children's author. Then the recognition and acknowledgments by Ms. Tisha Arnold, who is the Program Specialist of Planning, Institutional Research, and Public Information. Last and certainly not least, we will have our closing remarks by Dr. Mary E. Benjamin, the Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs. We ask that you silence all cell phones at this time and give today's program your absolute undivided attention. Thank you for your presence and your participation today.
I want to give you greetings on behalf of the Lyceum Committee and also the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff student body. I have been charged with giving the purpose of this function and also the committee. And I first want to say the Lyceum Committee is charged with to develop a cultural and entertaining program to meet the varieties, needs of the interests of students. While designing primarily for the university student, the program is open to the public of Pine Bluff. And so the committee works with the Southeast Arkansas Fine Arts Council to coordinate programs with those of the council. And so I hope you enjoy this program, and I hope you enjoy the day, and hope you enjoy the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. Thank you so much.
Good morning. Good morning. This is going to be short. Sometimes, and we must learn things to understand and to use them for our future positively. And this is to be the moments to learn and to get the vision for our future. And I hope this is the things we should learn. I'm so glad and so happy to introduce such great speakers today. And Mr. Holum, Daniel, or Dan, and is not only a financial advisor for the 30 years, but also are the insightful and the energetic writer for the children's books. And Mr. Mark Henn is one of Disney's the best animator, more than 30 years. And you know the young Simba from The Lion King, and Jasmine from Aladdin, and many other characters. And you will find out today. And please welcome Mr. Holum, and following is Mr. Henn.
Young is a friend of mine, or Dr. Park is a friend of mine, and I want to thank him. He is the one who introduced me to the Lyceum Committee. I'd like to thank the Lyceum Committee for this invitation. And of course, it has been a pleasure working with Dr. Yolanda Page and Tisha Arnold. I told them this morning they are even nicer in person than they are over the phone. But, all right, now my job, I've got 30 minutes, and I'm going to tell you how to write a book, but there's a few issues we've got to talk about before we talk about writing a book. But when you look at writing, you have to understand we communicate, obviously, by using words. Writing is word pictures. Here's a good word picture. You are golden lions. At church Sunday morning, I go to a big church. We were singing choruses, and in the middle of the chorus, I was thinking, I get to meet the Golden Lions. And you have an incredible mascot. How about these mascots? I'm not making this up. The Fighting Artichokes, Scottsdale Community College. The Armadillos, San Antonio, Texas. I would run from this next one. The Banana Slugs, UC Santa Cruz. Stanford has a tree that marches with the band. Now, what do you think dogs do to trees? But you are the Golden Lions. In Disney's Lion King, the story revolved around Simba, a golden lion. Mark animated young Simba. When I think about a lion, and I took some time to think about it, there are three areas. They have a powerful presence, They're courageous, and they have a mighty heart. The heart of a lion. That fits, doesn't it? Who paints good word pictures? One of my favorite characters is Medea. Tyler Perry's Medea. What did Medea say one time? She said, "I'll go to church when they have a smoking section." Can you get your mind around that? Or Cicely Tyson, that magnificent actress, says, "Peace be still." Medea says, "Here's my piece of steel." And she pulls a revolver from her apron pocket. Bill Cosby. This is probably before a bunch of you. He's been entertaining for 50 years. He was in Little Rock last month, but he gave a brief explanation of how the British lost the Revolutionary War. Listen to these word pictures. You will wear red coats, march in a single file, in an open field as the drummers beat their drums, while all the Indians and colonists of the world will hide behind rocks and trees and shoot at you. What's the common denominator between Tyler Perry and Bill Cosby? They discovered their gifting. That's point one, gifting. Everyone has been given at least one special gift from God, something you are really good at. But how do I know mine? Well, here's a good, simple explanation. If you're good at it, then most likely that is your gift. Then what? Well, you do more of it, and you develop it. It will be, when you discover your gifting, it will be like a fire that lights your path. Let that fire consume you. You'll be amazed at the energy that will come to you. It will be the accent point of your life. Get still. I have a 19-year-old. I talk to her. The earplugs are in. She doesn't hear a thing. But I'm going to tell you, you get still. You take the earplugs out. Listen to your heart. Listen to that quiet voice of God. As I said, point one is gifting. The next is simply don't let anybody tell you you can't. Cynics will push against you. The jealous will mock you. But friends will understand it and affirm you. Sometimes we have to leave relationships that have warning signs that just say dead end. Although painful, I've done this, and I found myself very glad. You have to go on. There will be distractions. I went to a conference, and this man gave this illustration. So I'm just going to use a few people. My wife, Vicki, is in this white top. I'm going to go right across the row here. You in the military uniform. All of you are firemen. But there are other responsibilities because you work 24 hours. All the beds are upstairs. No one has time when the rush is on to go down the stairs. They slide down a pole. So your responsibility is to shine that pole. Again, 24 hours. You're going to make breakfast. You'll clean up after breakfast. You're going to make lunch. You'll clean up after lunch. Rick, you're going to make dinner. Nancy, you're going to clean up after dinner. Over there in the tan shirt, your responsibility is to make sure the truck is fueled. And in the red shirt, there's a Dalmatian puppy, and you're going to walk it. Okay, let's review. What's your job? Pardon me? Pole shiner? Pole shiner. That was my answer when I went to the conference. It's wrong. Your job is to put out fires. Isn't that, are you getting that? The other are responsibilities. My point is, distractions can get so subtle. You stay busy, you work overtime, but if you're not careful, you will forget your real purpose, your real gifting. This is my pole shining story. I have two sisters. One is in a three-man attorney's office. And when Peggy learned that I was writing a book, she said, "We have a patent attorney." And she said, "Call Mr. Zamudio." I did. And he did all of what I'm going to tell you for free. And it could have been a $6,000 bill. He said, the first thing is you've got to be copyrighted. So he had to do research on the name Sleepy Sheepy. And he found that there was a German company years ago that had filed for Sleepy Sheepy, never used Sleepy Sheepy in anything, so they had to abandon it. So after waiting weeks and weeks and weeks, he said, it's open. You and Mark need to apply for a copyright. Through this unknown man, we were copyrighted, trademark, registered with the Library of Congress. It took a lot of time, but I'm going to tell you, I was so enamored with that. When we got that, he told me specifically, you and Mark own Sleepy Sheepy. Whether it's in a book, it's on a t-shirt, on a tablet, you own it. No one in the United States can use it except you. Now this is just me. Flip-flops, t-shirts, sunglasses, and shorts. I own Sleepy Sheepy in America. And I was so enthralled by all this. And then one day Mark said, because I had started the book, Mark said, Dan, how's the book coming? And it was like this, oh no. I got so busy with working with the attorney that I had laid down my pen. Bad story there. And I had to really get going. My job was to write a book. So my point is, you can get off target and not even realize it, doing legitimate things. So here's the thing to tell you, and it's just a question. Don't you think it would be smart to prepare boundaries to prevent distractions in your life? I think so. Okay, point 3, don't let anybody tell you can't. At my age, I'm 61, you see a lot of doctors. A lot of doctors. And it's good to go to the doctor because you know. But I had this doctor that I really liked. And one day he just offhanded said, what would you like to do besides being an investment advisor? And I said, I'd like to write a book. What I'm going to tell you is beyond stupid. He looked at me through his glasses, raised his eyebrows, leaned back and said, you? It was really ugly. I didn't miss a beat. With my English literature degree, I said, yeah, me. He started fumbling because he saw that I believed in myself. And by the way, I dumped him. And I have another doctor that I literally saw last week. He said, okay, I'll see you in another year. And I saw a little sign in his office, voted best doc by his peers. Sometimes you've got to shut the relationship down if it's not to your benefit. But hear me, please. Don't let anybody tell you you can't. You go on. Point 4, what will be your moment? Do you remember that U.S. Airways flight 1549 that crash landed in the Hudson River? Sure, we all do. It's called the Miracle on the Hudson. It happened January 15th, 2009. They were 3 minutes in this flight. It was going from New York's LaGuardia to Charleston, South Carolina, or Charlotte, North Carolina. 3 minutes into the flight, they hit a huge flock of birds. And there was an immediate and complete loss of thrust. They radioed the control tower, no power, we've got to ditch. 150 passengers, 5 crewmen, crash landed in the Hudson River. I got to hear Dave Sanderson this year. He was the last man on that flight. Dave is big. He is burly. And he said, I rushed from my seat to the exit and was just ready to go out the door. And he said, something from my childhood training said, stop. You were taught to care for others. And this man stood in 36-degree temperature water, helping every person out of that plane. Outside, the temperature was 20. The wing was so filled on his side, he couldn't even get out. And he lost feeling in his legs. He's been recognized as a hero. He still works for Oracle, but he travels the country telling his story, a life nearly lost, a new life in Christ. Off stage, Dave told the story of standing off stage with Sully Sullenberg, the pilot of that flight. And he said, Sully, what was the moment you knew that we were going to make it? He said, when we cleared the 600-foot George Washington Bridge by 300 feet. He said a lot of people would die. I did some research. The Washington Bridge happens to be the busiest bridge in the world. Annually, 106 million people cross that 2-layer bridge that has 14 lanes. He said, that was my moment. You will have a moment someday. And I can tell you, I started writing late. I got married, had children, had a new job, and just worked and worked and worked and worked and worked, and enjoyed being married to Vicki of 32 years. But inside, here I am, a financial advisor, but my degree was English literature. And I had articles printed, one went international, but I just stuck with my job. But I want to tell you my moment. Maybe it will help someone in this room. The summer of '05, I read Lloyd Reeb's book, From Success to Significance. It basically said, you're in your 50s. What are you going to do for God the rest of your life? And I'm a practicing believer, and I tried hard, very active in church, but what are you going to do? And I was a jack of all trades. I just did everything to help the church. But what are you really going to do? And he said, success is great, but significance is lasting. I couldn't stop thinking about that book. Then Hurricane Katrina hit, and I was watching Neil Cavuto on Fox News interview Lee Scott, who then was the CEO of Walmart. And you know, Walmart stores were destroyed, Louisiana, Mississippi, just all over the place. And Cavuto said, well, what's that going to do to your stock? And Lee, what will that do to your stock's price? And Lee said, it doesn't matter. These are our people, our shoppers who have lost everything. Guys, you'll know what I mean. Girls, you don't. Guys, you know what I mean. I have the most difficult time crying. Inside I cry, outside I can't shed a tear. And I listened to that, and I sat at my desk and held back weeping tears. A few days later, I watched a video, and this guy was a business exec in Chicago, and I grew up right outside of Chicago, and he said, during lunch, I would run in the worst neighborhoods. And I knew about those neighborhoods. And he said, I wonder what would happen if I would just show up on a Saturday with a ball and a bat and a glove. This is proven. He and some other guys with that one question established the largest boy-girl baseball league in the nation. One question, what happens if I show up with a ball, a bat, and a glove? And from that, he even told a story of a boy riding to practice on rims. He didn't even have the rubber on his tire, just rims to get there. And once again, and to top it off, Mike Boschetti is sitting next to me. Boschetti happened to be a starting linebacker in the 1969 Razorback Texas game when they were 1-2. And Mike is still massive. And I'm biting my lip and everything else because all of a sudden I'm wanting to cry. And so I found a private place and I said, God, I never cry. Am I going crazy? He said, no. He said, I've shown you what I've seen, what I see every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that same quiet voice said to me a few days later, he said, I want you to write a children's book. Okay, now, how do you write a children's book? I called Mark, and this is what I said. Mark's on the West Coast. I said, Mark, the Lord told me to write a children's book. Will you illustrate? He said, yeah. You know, we've been friends for 15 years, and so it wasn't like some nutcase calling him. I just said, the Lord told me to write a children's book. So during the time, Mark animated Princess Tiana in The Princess and the Frog, and Winnie the Pooh and Christopher Robin in the animated feature Winnie the Pooh. We completed Sleepy, Sheepy, and Daniel. So this is the real passion. This is the fun for me. How do you write a book? Well, one, you know the end from the beginning. Mine is a religious book. It's the story of Daniel ending up in the lion's den. So we knew where Daniel was. But what you do is you figure out how to get there. You add twists and turns, humor and drama. You develop characters. Oh, that's fun. And their traits. And then for me, when writing a children's book, you have to understand your readership. You understand their attention span, you understand their reasoning, you understand their logic capabilities. My intent when I write is to draw a child up. You don't write down to them, you pull them up. You introduce some words, some thoughts that make them go, Daddy, what is this? Mom, what is this? Auntie, what is this? But you're working to, you write above their comprehension. I avoid using the current culture of words and phrases. What's hot today is not tomorrow. I've got a friend here from college, Rick Williams. He drove in from Indianapolis. We met in 1968. This word was really big in 1968. Shooby-dooby-doo. Frank Sinatra, oh, listen to him say, shooby-dooby-doo. What? That sounds like junk. So, it's the same thing in writing a book. I avoid the current culture of words and phrases. What's hot today is not tomorrow. And since this is a biblical account, I stay true to the scripture. No compromising to fit my limited thinking. But you do have to put a little jam on the bread, especially when you're talking to kids. And so what we had were talking, thinking animals that demonstrate all human emotions. Also, each page must feed the next. You never waste a page. Daniel lived in a pagan world. He prayed 3 times to God. Sleepy Sheepy was there with his buddy. Coco the camel was there with Sifter the horse. And Sleepy asked Sifter, he says, who is he talking to? And that's right at the beginning of the book. And then Coco pops out behind a haystack, and Daniel comes in, and the whole story changes, and that question was not answered, and it was not answered purposely, so we could develop what's going on. So the reader had to live with an unanswered question. Now, how do you organize this? Organization is the answer to so much of creativity. You develop groups of scenes. They're very rough order. You follow with an outline. Then you take each point in the outline and you free write. You let your mind run free. You list everything you can. And I'm going to tell you, the list will grow. You put anything and everything down on paper. It takes months because you keep going back to it and back to it and back to it. But it will take shape, and it will be obvious what fits and what doesn't. Then the next step is so fantastic. I visited Mark at the Disney studio, and I saw it. I saw the famed Disney storyboard, scene after scene of Mulan. Mark was animating Mulan. Storyboarding was developed by Walt Disney and the Walt Disney Studio in the 30s. The first real storyboard, 1933. It was a short on the 3 Little Pigs. What is a storyboard? The storyboard is a series of sketches displayed in sequence for the purpose of pre-visualization before an animated feature. I really was unsure how to write a book. It was my first. So I applied their model. And this is what happened. Essentially, I was writing the story by scenes rather than chapters. It turned into a flow chart. Then the text writing began. You go over this writing a lot. When satisfied, you give it to a professional's professional, and this is what happens. It's hands off. His job is to analyze and critique. This scene doesn't fit. This is repetitive. Rewrite. A few meetings and a few rewrites later, the project was finished. Then it was overnighted to Mark on the West Coast. The rest is history. That's how you write a book. When we get back to Maumelle today, I've got a 29-scene book titled Sleepy Sheepy and Christmas Day. It is beyond cool. And Mark and I are going to go through it. And I told Mark, I said, Mark, this time, instead of just the text, in parentheses, I wrote my description of the scene. I was so proud of myself. Mark said, I don't need it. Well, I said, well, at least it helps me visualize. Okay, now, again, friends, I'm so proud to talk with the Golden Lions. This campus is beautiful. Your leaders are impressive. my little blank sheet of paper that how do I start? This is just some of the evidence. It is already on 6 of 7 continents. Only Antarctica remains. And it went to Antarctica, but the PhD that did her studies went home to Arizona, so all the books went to Arizona. Currently, we have boxes being shipped in a 40-foot cargo container to African missionaries. They're going to 4 nations: Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Ghana. These are all English-speaking nations. Ghana, a Ghanese man, saw it at the end of last year and said, please send it to us. We will put it in our libraries. Wow. People are going to read this I will never meet. A second shipment of books in June will be flown to Rwanda. Australia, we are in Beijing, Communist China. Last week I was introduced to another missionary who teaches in China. And he said, because of their negative view of Christianity, we will use this book to teach integrity. Isn't that cool? Kabul, Afghanistan. It was at Camp Eggers in Kabul, Afghanistan, our military base there. It's in Jerusalem, Romania. Get this, Poland. There's a woman from our church that goes to Poland every year or two. And Poland is very advanced in the business world. And they meet with young women who are entrepreneurs who are also learning how to speak English. Imagine learning how to speak English via a Bible study that points to God. That really gets me. It's in Arkansas's bookcases for children. It's in homes. It's in a home for sexually abused young women. I can't even tell you the location. It has to be kept a secret because of all the people that could cause trouble. Stalkers. It's in an Arkansas women's prison. Last year, a woman who has a severely handicapped daughter met with a woman who has, what do you call it? What do you ladies wear? Gowns for proms. She had, sorry. She had dresses all over the place. They spread the word. They said, let's have a beauty contest for the handicapped. We've got one. She's 30. And they get left out. And they did this so right. They sent the word out. There were 125 kids. Sorry. Precious little kids. You almost slapped your hands silly, applauding for every one of them. They like this color. They like this TV. I sent our book to the organizer, and I said, I've got people who have donated. Would you consider giving this book? And she told me later, she said, I was crying and praying. What can we do in the gift bag? It was the gift bag's main gift. 125 of these precious children. And I met Ginger Beebe and just gave her, Mark and I met Ginger Beebe and gave her a book. She wrote a note back. She said this would be in the governor's mansion. I could go on, but do you recognize the amazing hand of God? I can't make this stuff up. So we go back to point 1, find your gift. He's the giver. He is the giver. And he wants the best for you. Hear me. He wants the best for you. He will take you beyond anything you can dream. When this started, I had no clue I'd get to speak to you. I don't know where your thinking is, but I want you to go one step further with me. I'm not a minister. I'm not a theologian. I'm Dan. When I was in trouble, it was always Daniel Scott, but I'm Dan. Do you like tattoos? Yeah, I've got a daughter that's got 3 of them. That's the other daughter. Do you like tattoos? Guess what? So does God. In Isaiah 49:16, he said, "See, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands." You. God is not just a bigger us. He is supreme. All knowledge. He designed you. He has a plan for you. This gifting, if you really get down to it, gifting is given by Christ. It is distributed by His Spirit at His discretion. No one has control of who gets it. It is never to be sought. No gift is considered better than the other, only love. Love never builds itself up. It is driven by God's direction. You got to include Him. Do you remember Rafiki in The Lion King? Simba was running from his responsibility, or let's say it, his job. He was running. Do I stay with Timon and Pumbaa, or do I return to Pride Rock? What did Rafiki say in that fabulous scene? He said, "It is time." Golden Lions, it's your time. Thank you. This has been a pleasure.
All right. Well, good morning. Are we? Yeah, we're still morning. Good morning, everyone. How many are college students from UA right here, PB? Okay. And the rest of you are local, high school? What different grades? We got all college kids here? High school kids? Any high school kids? No? All right. That's fine. I'm just curious. It was great. It was really nice to see everybody. I want to thank all Yolanda and Carla and everybody here, Tisha, for their incredible generosity to invite us to come here and talk and share a little bit. Daniel, thank you again for, this is my 3rd trip to Little Rock and first time over here to Pine Bluff, but every time we come in, it's usually a Sleepy Sheepy related kind of a project. But anyway, I'm Mark Henn, and as Daniel alluded to already, I illustrated the book that he wrote. And what's really interesting, and what I wanted to share with you, is just kind of a little bit of the process of what I went through in creating the illustrations for the book. And I'll also talk a little bit about my career as a Disney animator. I've been there this is my 32nd year now with Walt Disney Studios. And it's hard to believe, but God has been very generous. And for me, this is, it's a dream come true. Because I was a very small boy. I grew up in Ohio, and that was, if you had asked me when I was in elementary school or whatever, what would you like to be when you grow up? Most kids would say firemen, teachers, educators, whatever. I want to grow up and be a Disney animator, and everybody kind of looked at me funny. And and in line with what Dan talked about, following your dreams, that's exactly what I ended up doing. And in fact, there's a funny little story that goes along with that. When I was in junior college, and I was really searching, I had had some major back surgery that kind of side-railed my college dreams for a little while. And so I had decided I needed to get to an art school. I really needed to get to a really good art school. And but in the meantime, I thought, well, I'm going to send portfolios right to the studio and just see what happens. So I put together a portfolio after my first year of college, and I sent it to the Walt Disney Studios, and they sent back a very nice letter saying, well, there's this is interesting, or, you know, send us some more stuff. We'd like to see more drawings in line of figure drawing and some quick sketches and things like that. And I was like, okay, I can do that, although I had absolutely no idea really what they were talking about. But I was attending a junior college at the time, and my dad, who was a professor there, says, well, let me introduce you to the art teacher. He knows you guys can talk the same language. So we went, I met this instructor, and I got in some of his drawing classes, and you know, I was doing what I thought was right. I put together a second portfolio and sent it off to the studio, and they came back with, no, you don't have what we're looking for. Thank you, but no thanks. Well, I was like, you know, I'm bound and determined. So I kept going to classes. I stayed in there, and I put together a third portfolio and sent it off. I thought for sure I got it. I know what I've got. I think this is what they're looking for. And I sent it off for the third time. And I got a reply back from a gentleman by the name of Don Duckwall. He was, you know, which is funny coming from Disney. But I had never met him, and he was the gentleman in charge of the studio and hiring and bringing in new talent and that at the time. And he wrote back this letter, and I think I have it somewhere, I don't know, but it burned in my mind in one of his comments. He says, you know, it's not that you're not a talented artist or anything like that, but you just may not have what it takes to travel the narrow roads that our animators travel in this business of animation. And I just like, you know, that just really, you know, got me going. But so I was turned down for a third time, but I stuck with it. And I had heard of this school in California called the California Institute of the Arts, and they had a connection with the studio. It was a studio or a school that the studio helped give seed money to. They wanted, Walt felt very passionately about training up young artists, so he helped found this school that housed all the fine and performing arts. And in the mid-70s, when a lot of the old original artists were either dying or retiring, and you know, somebody at the studio says, you know, we might need to start hiring some young new people in here. And so they started this program, this animation program at Cal Arts, it's known as, and with that purpose in mind. So a lot of the instructors were former Disney artists. And so I basically took the same portfolio that I had been rejected with at the studio for the third time and used that and sent that to the school as an admissions portfolio. And I was accepted. And they said, yes, we'd happily accept you into the Disney animation program at Cal Arts. So I packed my bags sight unseen. I'd never been you know, west of the Mississippi ever. And I just, you know, kind of like Mary Tyler Moore, and I packed my bags and headed off to California and ended up at the Disney animation program there at Cal Arts. And 32 years later, I'm happy to say that I said God has been very good and blessed me with a wonderful career. Anyway, but we're going to do some, hopefully if we get some time at this first session, we'll, if you have any questions, just kind of save them up, and we'll take some questions at the end. And if not, after lunch, we've got, in the book signing, we're going to have a question and answer session in a very intimate situation. So if you're too embarrassed to ask a question in a big group like this, just save it, and if you can come back, we'll answer any questions. But anyway, what I want to do is let's go to the DVD. I have brought a little DVD that just kind of gives you a sampling of some of the work that I've done at the studio, and then we'll talk about working on Sleepy Sheepy and Daniel.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Have you ever seen anything so wonderful in your entire life? Wow, cool. But, what is it? I don't know.
Don't be absurd. You look perfect. Perfect. Perfectly foolish.
He doesn't talk about me much.
Chill out, man. I don't eat cats. It's too much fun. I've been watching, and I think there's a serious need for some professional guidance. Now, what do you say we team up and change old Louie's mind about sharing some of those hot dogs?
Looks like we need about,
I'd say 750 of them.
But Maggie, where are we gonna get all that money?
calm down. I have an idea. Give me your arm. Okay, now the other one. When I say go, push against my back, and we'll walk up the hill. Ready? Go.
Ow! You did that on purpose.
No, I didn't. Now we're gonna have to work together to get out of this, so follow my lead. Ready? Right foot.
Who's right? You're right or mine?
I don't care. Mine.
Well, why yours?
Okay, you're right. Ready?
Okay, got it.
Okay. Right. Left. Right.
Do you really think your dream boy exists?
Oh, Pip, I know he's out there somewhere. I would.
I eat you now.
Hold it. Where is it? Show us, swine. I warn you, the king's patience is short.
There's
I
something
know exactly what you're going to say. Francois told me all about it.
He did it. How did he?
Oh, it doesn't matter. I think it's a marvelous idea.
You do? I mean, you really want to?
I don't think it's a matter of wanting. It's a matter of duty.
Duty? I never thought of it. Well, all right. How does next April sound?
Heavens, no. We must act immediately tonight.
Tonight? But wait.
Well, it's not much, but it's got a great view. Wow, the palace looks pretty amazing, huh?
Oh, it's wonderful.
I wonder what it'd be like to live there. Have servants and valets.
Oh, sure. People who tell you where to go and how to dress. Oh,
That's better than here. You're always scraping for food and ducking the guards.
you're not free to make your own choices.
Sometimes you feel so
You're just
trapped.
This one's late. I'll bet that when it blooms, it will be the most beautiful of all. Well, Eric, it appears that I was mistaken. This mystery maiden of yours does, in fact, exist. And she is lovely. Congratulations, my dear.
We wish to be married as soon as possible.
Oh, yes, of course. But these things do take time, you know?
This afternoon, Ripley. The ship departs at sunset.
Oh, very well, Eric. As you wish.
people that come from everywhere. Oh, so. Somebody! Anybody! Help!
the actual process of illustrating a book is really not too dissimilar to animating on these films. And, you know, it all starts with a story. And when you have, at the studio, that's the very first thing that has to be developed, is what's the story? What are the characters that we're going to talk about? And what we want to get on the screen. And so my job as an animator then is to bring those characters to life. And it's really no different. That's a very, you know, tried and true profession of the great illustrators in their day. It's just illustration doesn't move. Norman Rockwell, N.C. Wyeth, a lot of the you know, great illustrators of America's golden age were great storytellers. And had they, I've often thought about what would Norman Rockwell have been like if he had been an animator. I think he would have been absolutely amazing. Because essentially they went through the same process that the animators go through in terms of developing and visualizing and coming up with you know, their scenes to bring these characters to life. It's the same process that an illustrator goes through. So it starts with a story. And in this case, Daniel called and said, I want to write a children's book, and would you mind interested in illustrating it for him? And I said, sure, I'd love to. So we had to get the story. So Daniel worked very feverishly, as you heard, and got the story written and showed it to a lot of people, and people that would kind of edit it and give him feedback. And that's exactly the same kind of process we go through at the studio. We put up our stories, and it's never perfect the first time out. And that's a very, you know, no matter what you do in life, oftentimes the first thing you do isn't going to be perfect the first time out. So at the studio, it's a practice to put something up, and somebody said you want to get it up and be wrong as fast as you can. And so you get it up, you look at it, and right away we start tearing it apart and saying, all right, well, what's working, what's not working, what's going to make it stronger. And this is the same process that Dan and I went through with his book. And so once you have that all established, and Dan says, okay, here's the finished script, or here's the finished text for the book, then he hands it over to me. And much the same way that as I do in our films, I read through it, I find out who are the characters, you know, what is the story. And of course, in this case, Daniel in the Lion's Den is very well known, and I knew it very well myself. And you know, you start asking, okay, now you've got Sleepy Sheepy and Coco the Camel and Sifter the Horse. You've got Daniel, he's got some villains in there, and lions, and the angel. So all this stuff in Daniel's mind is just words on a page. So now my job as the illustrator is to take those words and bring that to life. And again, that's pretty much exactly what I do in animation. I'm looking at storyboards, looking at story reels, talking with the directors, and the directors are saying, okay, in this movie, you know, you're going to be cast as young Simba. You're going to be doing Simba. So I'm like, okay, so I'm studying lions. We're going to zoos. We're doing all kinds of research in preparation to actually sitting down and animating a scene. And I actually did a little bit of research for this picture. I needed to double check. I knew camels, you know, had humps and things, but I really wanted to look at a camel because I needed to come up with a design. So I looked at, you know, what does a camel look like, you know, and you study horses, you know, and sheep. And I actually was curious because this is King Nebuchadnezzar, and I was curious to know what did he look like? Are there any pictures? Are there any, you know, carvings on a wall that might say, well, this was King Nebuchadnezzar? And so thankfully with the internet today and the vast amount of information that's out there, you can go out and do a fair amount of research. And I was curious, you know, some of the architecture a little bit, but I realized there were some images of Nebuchadnezzar, and I was stricken by the image of his beard, which is depicted as must have been very curly and things like that. So I would make notes and sketch down ideas in that. So then it comes time to read through the text, kind of identify how many scenes or pages in a book you're going to be illustrating, and then you start making thumbnails. It's basically the same process I go through when I'm animating. The director says, here's your scene of Simba. Simba's going to be, let's say the scene there, Timon offers him a plate full of bugs and worms and things and says, this is great stuff. And Simba's not so sure. So I start I'll listen to the dialogue, and I'll start making little thumbnail sketches, planning. That's one thing, and when I do talks at the studio to our younger artists, I really, really stress planning is integral, and it goes really into whatever you choose to do. Planning is very key. But for an artist, planning is important. You make little sketches, you plan things out, and from there you start making bigger sketches before you commit to going to full color. So what I brought with me, we have some of the early pencil sketches that I showed and sent to Dan just to kind of give him some rough ideas. I'm just going to turn this here. So what these are is just some of the early pencil sketches that I did for some of the illustrations that would appear in the book, just to kind of run them by Dan and see what he thought about it. So this is, Daniel in the lion's den, obviously, and he's praying to the Lord here, and the lions are thinking about dinner, and Daniel is thinking about not being dinner. And up at the top here, I've kind of written some notes to myself that I wanted this to be kind of a dark, cool, dark overall tone for the piece with a little shaft of light kind of coming down, highlighting Daniel and putting these lions in the background. And just in direct contrast, this is the after sketch when after Daniel has spent the night in the lion's den, and Nebuchadnezzar he's had a sleepless night, because he's worried, and he rushes down and asks Daniel how things went, and this is what happened during the night. The angel of the Lord came down, and in my vision, I thought, you got to find something that's entertaining. How would an angel, keep these lions from wanting to eat Daniel? So I thought it'd be kind of funny. He just ties their mouths shut, and we did it like that. And then this is kind of the follow-up, just a scene here where Daniel has been released. The king has, he survived the den, and he and the king are walking off in the distance, and you've got Sleepy here, Coco and Sifter, and they're excitedly, talking about what's happened and everything. Is just very, very, happy endings are always a good thing, and this one definitely has a happy ending. So from that, once the pencil sketches have been approved, then I start going to full color. So for all the, those of you that are maybe taking notes and all the technical stuff, this is watercolor paper. It's a hot press, 300-pound watercolor paper that I used, and and I just went over it with watercolor. My idea was to lay the watercolor in and then go over it with a pen and do the final detailed drawings. So this is the final version of that last scene that I showed you. So that's the final version. This was the pencil sketch. This was a reminder. And then this was the final thing. And then as you can see, there are some changes there, which is okay. That's, sometimes you make your sketch, you think you've got your idea pretty well nailed down, and then you wake up the next morning and you go, no, I've got a better idea. And I've got to tweak it a little bit, and that's all part of the process. And I see a few people nodding their heads out there. So that's what happened on this one here. Let's take a look at this should be Daniel in the lion's den. This is the final for that very first one here. So that was how that one turned out. I kind of changed the composition a little bit. added a few more lions and that, but I basically stuck with my notes that I had. I kept it a very cool, dark color and just had this shaft of light coming down. And then the last one here is the scene with the angel. The angel is taking care of protecting Daniel in the lion's den by tying up the mouths of the lions. Again, this was just simply when I was ready to go to a final color, I would have my rough sketch alongside of me as your guide. That's why you make these thumbnail sketches. And then you would, from that, then I could just very lightly go over, make a light pencil sketch over on the watercolor paper. From that, then I'd go ahead and paint, do the watercolor, and then come back with a dark ink. The pencil lines would still show through enough, but then I would go through and put an ink line over it, and then you could take like a kneaded eraser and very lightly go over it, and that'll take up any of the extra pencil lines and gets rid of all that. And so that was basically my process. And I said, this is very much the way things work at the studio, with the collaboration of artists. This is certainly the writer, illustrator. If it's not the same person, more often than not, it's separate individuals, and that's a process I thoroughly enjoy. And I enjoyed doing that when I was in school, working with other people. And it goes all the way back to when I was in grade school or high school when I was in marching band. There was a great, there's a collaboration in being in a band even. And I think that's something that I carried over working at the studio, because I'm one of hundreds of amazing artists that work at the studio that work together. And I love that idea of the teamwork, of working as a team on a particular project and then seeing it, whether it's an animated film, or in this case, a finished book like this. There's something for me personally that's very gratifying, and I think that's very unique. So, anyway, we got time for some questions, I think, maybe? A few questions? Yeah, let's take a couple of questions. Anybody have any questions? Any art students? How many art students are out there? I walked through one of the art studios when we got here today, and it was so cool. It was so neat. I just love that. This is such a great time in your lives, and take full advantage of it. It's really a great thing. And whether you go into art as a full-time career or not, it's something you can do your whole life. And for me, I've been animating for 32 years, but this is brand new. I've never done this before. This was kind of the first time I'd ever illustrated a book. It was something I'd always thought about doing. And the Lord just worked it out to put Daniel and I together to do this. And another thing that I do, because the studio I walked through was the sculpture studio, is I do sculpting. And I've been sculpting for about going on almost 15 years. That's kind of therapy for me. It's very different from what I do at the studio, and drawing all day long or working on the computer. But so coming home and sculpting has been a real relief. And as I said, it's very therapeutic, as well as doing some painting. So I'm trying to do things that fulfill some of my other interests. So anyway, do we have any questions? Yes, right here. No, I worked on everything you saw on the reel was work that I've done. Not every character in the scenes, but the main characters. Like I did Simba, but I didn't animate Timon in that little clip. Or I did Dodger and Oliver, but I didn't do the hot dog guy that kicks. That was just the way the clips got put together. But no, those are all films that I've worked on in the movies. Yeah. Yeah. Well, generally, from the very start, when somebody says, I've got an idea for a film, to when it's finished, is still about a 3 to 4 year process. But within that time, there's many steps that happen. So they may spend 1.5 years just developing the story. and then that starts to overlap, then we start coming on and start looking at characters, character designs, and then when they fire the gun and say production starts, we may have 18 months. I've had as many as 18 months. I've had as few as, like the Winnie the Pooh film that we worked on, I had 9 months of production time on that. So, you know, in the end, you're still looking at 2, 3, 4 years altogether, and with everything in between there. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, right here, sir.
If you're familiar with like writer's block, do you ever find yourself as an artist coming up against some type of block in creating a new character?
Yeah. Oh, it happens all the time. That's very common, and you know, for me, I don't let it beat me, but you know, whatever I think you need to do to kind of, you know, get up. So for me, I'm sitting at a desk most of the time, and it may just mean getting up and walking out, and just, you know, whether it's just to get out, walk around the studio, get some fresh air, get a cup of coffee, whatever. So, you know, I think you just have to kind of find whatever's going to clear your head. I mean, worst case, you know, I got to go home and just, you know, and start again the next day. I mean, there's times like that, but you never know. Just driving home, I'm constantly thinking about what I'm working on at the time. But yes, that does happen, and I think it's something you can use it, and I think control it, or you can let it control you, and I think that's the key. And I think you got to work through it. So you've got to find what it is, you know, that's going to, you know, get those cobwebs cleared out and get over that hurdle. But yeah, that's very common, and it's healthy. I think it's very healthy to go through those periods. Yeah.
How do you decide what your thing is? You have many things.
That's a good question. Well, you know, there's.
Especially when everybody's telling you you got to have one thing.
Well, maybe, you know, I guess you just. To me, it's what you're really passionate about, and that goes back to what Daniel was saying. You know, he was incredibly passionate about writing this book, and yeah, you don't want. You know, I had people, like I said, I was turned down 3 times at the studio, but that's all I ever wanted to do when I grew up. That's all I know. And that's, you know, the Lord's been incredibly gracious, and that's what He's let me do for these many years. And I'm looking at my kids now and basically trying to encourage them the same way. You know, find what you're passionate about. And really, you know, sometimes you may fall into it. I mean, I know people at work, there's kind of 2 types of people at work. There's people that come to the studio because they just dreamed of being there the whole time. You know, that was their dream. That's kind of me. There's many of me's like that at the studio. And then there's other people that just like, oh, I just kind of showed up one day, handed them my portfolio, and they said, yeah, you got a job. And they turned out to be equally passionate and terrific artists. So there's, you know, a lot of different paths for, you know, finding what that is. But to me, it's about, you know, what's going to get you up in the morning and get you into that studio or mechanic shop, or, you know, sit down in front of the computer and write, or whatever it is that is going to, you know, get you up in the morning. And I think that's, and it may mean some trial and error, you know. You might, you know, try something and you just hit a brick wall, and then you just have to, you know, either you keep trying and knock that wall down, or, you know, maybe, you know, another window opens or something else comes. So that's the best advice I can think of. But yeah, what really drives you? What's passionate? What makes you, you know, get up every day and face the day? It's a good question, though. Good question. Yeah, Richard.
When you do characters like Mickey Mouse or Winnie the Pooh, you know, characters that are already been created, do you find that to be harder to recreate drawings that have already been done, animations, or is it easier because you already have, or, you know, you try to do it exactly like they've done it, so it's kind of hard to match what, you know, what maybe Walt Disney did years ago?
Right. Well, there's kind of 2 sides to that, to answer that question about working with characters that have already been established, like Mickey Mouse or Winnie the Pooh, which I just finished on. The technical side is I don't have to reinvent the wheel, and that's good. That makes things a little easier. And on the more philosophical side, these characters, most of them, are very user-friendly, and it's easy to kind of bring yourself to those characters, but we approach them the same way that the artists that originally created them would have approached it, in terms of, you know, understanding who that character is, and, you know, what's the situation they're in, and just, you know, performing in that way, because, you know, animation is both, you know, this kind of art as well as performance. So it's all about, you know, the acting and the performing. So it's not that difficult. Yeah.
That was our last question.
That was our last one? Okay. Sorry. Catch me on the way out. Yeah, we have a Q&A at 2 o'clock if you can show up. We're happy to answer any questions. So again, thank you so much for coming, and thank you to our wonderful hosts here at UAPB, and we appreciate it.
Thank you again, Mr. Holum, Mr. Henn, for sharing with us and giving us just a glimpse at what it means to pursue what really makes you happy. If you would please join me, Mr. Holum, Mr. Henn, Dr. Benjamin. You will each receive something from the state and from the Pride. From the state, you will receive an Arkansas Traveler Award, and it states, "To all who shall see these presents, greetings. Know ye that the governor of the state of Arkansas, in the name and by the authority of the people of the said state, as vested in him by the Constitution and laws of the state of Arkansas, reposing special recognition for the distinguished accomplishments, does hereby appoint and commission Mr. Mark Henn and Mr. Daniel Holum as an Arkansas traveler, who is hereby authorized and commissioned to serve as an ambassador of goodwill from Arkansas to the people of other states, the people of nations beyond the borders of the United States, or wherever this ambassador of Arkansas may hereafter travel or reside. In testimony whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the great seal of the state of to be affixed at Little Rock this 25th day of April in the year of our Lord 2012. Our Governor Mike Beebe. Mr. Henn, this is for you.
It's heavy.
Very heavy. And Mr. Holum.
You want to get them both together? Okay.
Oh, okay.
Your gift from the Pride, of course, is a much coveted University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff sweater, one for each of you. Special acknowledgments to the Office of Academic Affairs, Ms. Cynthia McGee, School of Arts and Sciences, Mr. Henry Linton Sr., Thompson Hospitality, UAPB Printing Services, of course, our student ambassador from the Golden Ambassadors. Thank you, Frank, for being here and helping us with this program. If all the members of the 2012 Lyceum Committee would please stand and be recognized. Thank you again.
To the platform guests, to our presenters, you are outstanding. To the planning committee and everyone in the audience, I just want to take a quick moment to say thank you for helping us to carry out the mission of the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. We are a land-grant institution, and it is our responsibility to share our resources with the larger community, and we do that in different ways. We have more than 36 baccalaureate programs, 6 masters, 1 PhD. That is one way that we share resources, but we also share resources through outreach. And today's program has been a wonderful example of outreach in presenting the arts, the art of writing, the art of animation, the art of illustration, and sharing it with our students, giving them time to ask questions and to take advantage of people who are on the front line in the profession. It is no small accomplishment to bring talents of this nature to Pine Bluff, Arkansas. I am so glad that our TV is recording, our TV station will be showing some of this information to larger audiences. I want to thank you so much for being here, the planning committee for being so diligent in putting on a very, very educational program. I do encourage each of you to take advantage of the other events that are planned. And as you leave the halls of the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, please always leave with a good word for the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. Thank you so much.